Hello and welcome. So in this video I'll be showing you how to paint Moo Deng, the baby pygmy hippopotamus. So hello there everyone. I am not sure how many of you are familiar with Moo Deng, the baby pygmy hippopotamus, but it became an internet sensation within a very short span of time. So Moo Deng is actually a female 2-month-old pygmy hippopotamus species who's currently living in the Khao Keo Open Zoo in Seashell, Thailand. So she became famous and won the hearts of many due to her bubbly yet feisty character. She definitely has won my heart, which is why I decided to make a watercolor painting of her portrait. So if you'd like to check out her photos, I have it on the pins that I have saved on my Pinterest account. And if you want, you can download the sketch of this portrait on my Pinterest account as well. You can check the link in the description. I'll be painting using the Canson XL cold press watercolor paper, 300 grams per square meter, and the size is A5. Some coffee while I enjoy painting Moo Deng's portrait. To kickstart, I'll be sharing with you the color palette for the portrait of Moo Deng. To begin, I am going to mix the skin tone, the lightest skin tone of this baby hippo, which has a blush looking color. I would say something like pinkish brown shade. So I'm basically mixing burnt sienna with a little bit of magenta, since magenta will add a little bit of that blush effect. So I'm going to mix these two colors until I arrive at a very pinkish brown tone. And here's how the color looks like on the watercolor paper. So the second color for the skin tone is something similar to a grayish brown. So in order to arrive at this color, I am mixing some violet to sapphire. So if you don't have sapphire, you can use burnt umber and a little hint of that burnt sienna that I used earlier. So mix this color until you arrive at a brownish gray tone. I'll be using the mop style brush size 4 since it holds a lot of paint for the first layer of painting. So I'm going to begin by painting in the blush color onto the mouth area as well as the neck of the baby hippo. As you remember or notice from the reference photo, this is where the lighter tones appear. And I am painting this using the wet on dry technique, and my paint mix is light, which means I have more water in my paint mix. Since this is a first layer painting, I don't want it to appear too dark. Next, I'm going to paint the second skin tone shade onto the rest of its face as well as its body parts. And over here I am just painting a little bit of this darker shade onto its chin area, as it seemed to appear slightly darker than its neck area. Next, I am adding more magenta into the blush shade mix to paint inside the mouth of the baby hippo, since it has got more pinkish tone. So before the painting dries, I'm just attempting to lift out some pigment from some part of the sketch, since the hippo's body is usually wet and slippery, so it definitely has some shine or light effect. Alright, the first layer of painting is completely dry, so I'm going to move on to paint the second layer, and this time I'm using a smaller size mop brush, which is size 2, as you can see here, smaller than the earlier one that I used, because I'm going to focus on some details. And the paint mix that I'm using is still the same dark skin tone mix, which is the violet mixed with sepia, but this time I have added more of the sepia paint so that it appears slightly darker than the first layer that I painted. So while I paint the second layer, I'm going to focus on the tonal values, which means I am going to be careful with my brush strokes and paint all those dark areas or shadows and leave the lighter areas empty. And after applying this second layer of paint, I am going to give it some light washes using a clean damp brush. So basically this technique helps you to achieve a softer looking edge and not hard lines. Unless you would like to maintain that hard lines look, then you can skip this step. So I will continue to paint these tonal values onto the other parts of the hippo's body, followed by the light washes using the clean damp brush. As I paint the tonal values, I am also focusing on making some fine lines using the tip of my brush to create folds, since the hippo's body has got some chubbiness in their flesh, so the fine lines mimics the folds on the body. And as you complete the second layer of painting, you will notice how important the first layer of light paint was. If you would have painted the blush area with a darker shade, then you will definitely have a hard time trying to show the blush area when you paint the second layer. Alright, time to paint the face, but I am leaving out the eye area, whereby I'll come back to it at a later stage to paint the cornea of the hippo, as well as leaving out some empty spaces to show the highlights or shine on its face. And once done, I'm going to leave the second layer of painting to fully dry. So time to paint the darker shade for the skin tone, and this is actually a very dark grey mix which I have achieved by mixing some sepia with sapphire blue shade. As I mix these two tones, I arrive at a very dark grey shade which is similar to a black. I have a black, but I felt that black would be too dark for the hippo's skin tone. Alternatively, you can use Payne's grey as well. So you can mix sapphire or burnt umber with any of your darker blue shades as in ultramarine to achieve this shade. So similar to the second layer of painting, I am going to focus this paint mix using the tonal value approach. And once again, I am using a clean damp brush to give it some light washes to soften those hard edges. Extending the dark grey paint mix towards its arms and leaving out some white patches indicating a very slippery look of its arm. I just realized that it is not the arms but legs. This animal has 4 legs. This animal has got 4 legs. Yep, so as I paint, I am trying to distinguish between the foreleg and the back leg on the left hand side of the hippo's body. So I have used the same dark grey mix onto the hippo's facial features, especially the nostril and eye areas. More fine tuning of the facial areas, just applying the paint mix first. Next, using a clean damp brush, I'm not just giving it light washes, but I'm also attempting to spread the paint towards the top part of its nose. So by doing this, you get to extend that hint of grey onto the top part of its nose while maintaining the highlights. Now time to fine tune its inner mouth. So I am actually falling back to the same second skin tone color that I used, which is the violet mixed with sapphire, but I have added in more magenta into the paint mix. And using the tip of my brush, I am just trying to define the oral cavity of the inner mouth, which is the tongue and gums. Extending the darkest grey mix onto its cornea as well. Alright, time to fine tune its facial area So I'm using the same brownish grey hint, which was the second skin tone. I'm just going to paint on its cheeks, which will help me to define the opening of its mouth. So in order to paint the smaller areas or smaller details, I'm using a smaller tip brush and extending the dark grey mix. Extending a little bit of burnt sienna mix to define the mouth area. So basically the painting process alternates between these three skin tone values. So the darkest areas will be applied with the dark grey shade, while the lighter areas will be applied with the brownish grey paint mix. Painting more lines on the abdomen to indicate the folds. So does this look like a baby hippo? More fine tuning is needed. Since the eye needs to look dark, I have mixed in some black into my grey mix. I'm just painting that onto the cornea and the brow bone or the brow area of the hippo, and also extending it on the darkest part of some of its facial features, including the ears. Alright, in order to make the hippo look even more shiny and slippery, as that's the nature of their skin, I've decided to paint the highlights using a white gouache paint. You can skip this step if you're not keen on using white gouache paint. Otherwise, as an alternate, you can also use some pastel pencil. Alright, let's complete this painting by giving it some background details. So here you go, my watercolor impression of Moo Deng, the baby pygmy hippo. So do you think it turned out well? So if you have become a fan of my work, then don't forget to hit the like and share button, as well as subscribe to my channel. And I hope to paint more baby animals in the future, so don't forget to hit the bell icon for latest videos from my channel.